He would expose the rat within the firm, until the secretary silences him with an unexpected gesture. Nathan Harrison trembled with nerves as he held the folder with documents that would prove the betrayal tearing apart the family business. His fingers were sweaty at the thought of the bombshell about to detonate at the board meeting that would start in a few minutes. That was when he felt a delicate hand rest on his shoulder. Turning around, he saw Brenda, the secretary who had worked at the company for over 20 years. She approached and whispered something that left him completely frozen. "Nathan, I need to tell you something before you walk into that room," she said urgently. "It's about your father." The young man, only 28 years old, felt the ground give way beneath his feet. For months he had been investigating the embezzlement that was driving the family business into bankruptcy. He had found forged documents, suspicious transfers, and a trail of corruption that seemed to lead directly to the CFO, Victor Miller. But now, with just 3 words from Brenda, his entire world had come crashing down. "What do you mean?" he managed to ask, even with his voice cracking. Brenda looked around, making sure no one was watching them in the hallway of the company located in downtown Chicago. "Your father. He's not the victim you think he is, Nathan. There's something you need to know before you expose anything at that meeting." Nathan had always admired his father, Arthur Harrison, who had built the company from scratch after inheriting a small auto shop from his grandfather. Harrison & Sons grew and became one of the leading automotive parts distributors in the metro area. Arthur was known for his honesty and dedication to the work. As an only child, Nathan grew up hearing stories about the sacrifices his father had made to build the business. He earned his business degree with the dream of one day taking over the company and honoring the family legacy. Everything changed 3 months ago when Nathan began noticing irregularities in the balance sheets. Numbers that didn't add up, ghost suppliers, and transfers to accounts no one could explain. "Brenda, I don't understand. For months I've investigated everything. All the evidence points to Victor. He's the one with system access. He's the one who approves the payments." "I know, sweetheart," Brenda interrupted, her eyes full of tears. "But there's a story you don't know. A story that began a long time ago, when you were still a child. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing." The secretary led Nathan into a small, empty meeting room. Her hands trembled as she closed the door behind them. "Nathan, do you remember when your family almost lost everything in 1998? When you were only 10 years old?" He remembered vaguely. It was a difficult time at home. His father stayed late at the office, his mother cried in secret in the kitchen, and there were hushed conversations about selling the house. "I remember a little. Dad said it was a crisis in the industry, that many companies went under back then." "It wasn't just that, Nathan." Brenda sighed deeply. "Your father made a mistake. A big mistake. To save the company and everyone's jobs here, he accepted help from people who weren't exactly trustworthy." Nathan's heart raced. "What kind of help?" "Loans with high interest, without official collateral. Your father was desperate. The company was going bankrupt, and 30 families would be left without a livelihood. He accepted money from dubious origins." Nathan felt as though he were hearing about a stranger, not about his father. "But that was over 20 years ago, Brenda. What does that have to do with what's happening now?" "Because Victor knows everything," she answered quietly. "He was the company's accountant back then. It was him who helped your father hide the money in the books, and ever since then he's been using that information against your family." The revelation hit Nathan like a punch to the stomach. Victor Miller wasn't the villain he had imagined. Or rather, he was a villain, but of a completely different kind. "Are you saying that Victor has been blackmailing my father for 20 years? "Exactly," Brenda confirmed. "And in the last few months, he's escalated everything. Your father has been paying larger and larger sums to keep the secret. Victor knows you've been investigating, and he's using that to pressure him even more." Nathan leaned on the table, feeling betrayed by everyone around him. "Why didn't you tell me this before? Why did you let me find everything out on my own?" "Because I promised your father I would never tell, and because—" She hesitated. "Because I have my own reasons to be afraid of Victor." Before Nathan could ask what she meant, the door to the room opened. It was Arthur Harrison, a 58-year-old man who seemed to have aged 10 years in the last few months. "Nathan, son, we need to talk," his father said, his voice weary. "Dad, Brenda told me about 1998. Is it true?" Arthur closed his eyes and sighed. "It's true, and it's the biggest regret of my life. Why did you never tell me about it?" "Because I was ashamed. Because I wanted you to see me as an honest man, not as someone who made deals with dangerous people to save the business." Nathan felt a mixture of anger and understanding. "And Victor? How long has he been blackmailing you?" "From the very beginning," Arthur admitted. "At first, the amounts were small. He said it was to make sure the secret didn't get out. But as the years went by, it kept increasing, and now he's literally draining the company dry," Nathan finished. Brenda approached the two of them. "There's something else you need to know. Victor isn't doing this alone." Father and son looked at her in surprise. His wife Claire found out about everything a few months ago. At first she was horrified, but then she saw an opportunity. "What kind of opportunity?" Nathan asked. "She told her husband that if he didn't increase the amounts, she would tell you everything herself. She has proof of everything. Bank accounts, transfers, even recordings of conversations between Victor and your father." Arthur sat down heavily in a chair. "My God, what a situation I've gotten myself into." Nathan looked at his father with a mixture of disappointment and compassion. He was still young, but at that moment he felt as though he were the one who needed to protect the family. "Dad, we need to end this. We can't keep being blackmailed forever." "But Nathan, if this gets out, my reputation will be destroyed, and the company is already being destroyed," his son interrupted. "At least if we tell the truth, we'll have control over the situation." Brenda cleared her throat discreetly. "There's something you don't know about me either." The two men turned to her. "I'm not just an ordinary employee. I'm your mother's cousin, Nathan. Distant, but we're family. And 25 years ago, when I was going through hard times, your parents took me in and gave me a job here." Nathan was shocked. "Why did I never know about this?" "Because your mother asked us to keep it a secret. She didn't want the other employees to think there was favoritism. But the truth is, I owe everything to your family, and that's why all these years I've protected your father's secret, even knowing how much it was hurting him." Arthur looked at Brenda with gratitude. "You've always been more than an employee to us, Brenda. You're family. And it's as family that I'm going to help you resolve this situation," she declared with determination. At that moment, the door opened again. It was Victor Miller, a 52-year-old man, tall and imposing, with a smile that never seemed sincere. "What's this intimate little meeting?" he asked with irony. "Nathan, weren't you the one eager to present your findings to the partners?" Nathan felt anger rise in his throat. "Victor, I know everything." "Know everything about what, kid?" The man laughed mockingly. "About the blackmail. About how you've been exploiting my father for years." Victor's smile disappeared immediately. "I don't know what you're talking about." "He knows, all right," Arthur intervened, getting up from his chair. "And I'm tired of living in fear. Victor, this ends today." "Arthur, you don't want to do this." Victor's voice turned threatening. "Think about your reputation, your family. Think about how people will react when they find out you took dirty money to save the company." "I'd rather be judged by the truth than be a slave to a lie," Arthur replied with a courage that surprised even himself. Victor looked around, realizing he had lost control of the situation. "You have no idea what you're doing. My wife has proof of everything. If I go down, everyone goes down with me." That was when Brenda smiled for the first time since the start of that conversation. "Actually, Victor, your wife has already talked to me." The man went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Claire came to me last week. She was tired of living with a man she didn't even recognize anymore. She gave me all the evidence she had against you, and also some very interesting recordings." Brenda took a small recorder out of her blazer pocket. "Want to hear one of the conversations your own wife recorded?" She pressed play, and Victor's voice echoed through the room. "Arthur is an idiot. For years he pays whatever I ask without questioning. And the son is even more naive. When I'm done with this family, I'll be the sole owner of this company." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan watched the different expressions crossing Victor's face. Surprise, anger, despair. "This recording is illegal," he stammered. "Maybe it is," Brenda agreed, "but it'll be very effective in explaining to the partners what really happened here all these years. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us who are just starting out. Now, continuing..." Victor tried to leave the room, but Nathan blocked his way. "No, you're going to stay here and explain everything to the partners. Everyone deserves to know the truth." "Nathan, you don't understand the seriousness of the situation." Victor played his last card. "If this story gets out, it won't just be your father who gets hurt. The whole company could be investigated. You could lose everything." "We're already losing everything anyway," Nathan replied. "At least now it'll be by our choice, not because of your greed." Arthur approached his son and placed his hand on his shoulder. "Son, are you sure you want to go down this path? There's no turning back once we tell everyone everything." "Dad, I'd rather we fall standing up, fighting for the truth, than keep living on our knees being blackmailed by this man." Brenda looked at her watch. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. We have to decide what we're going to do." "We'll tell everything," Nathan decided. "But first, I need to know something, Brenda. You said you had your own reasons to be afraid of Victor. What did he do to you?" The woman hesitated, but looking at Arthur and Nathan, she decided it was time to reveal one more secret. "For years, Victor tried to harass me. Nothing physical, but comments, insinuations, setting up awkward situations. When I refused to go along with it, he started threatening me." "What do you mean?" Arthur asked, outraged. "He said that if I told you anything about the blackmail, he'd make up stories about me. He said no one would believe a simple secretary over a respected director." Nathan felt the anger burn in his chest. "How many people has this man hurt over the years?" "More than you can imagine," replied a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned and saw Claire Miller, Victor's wife. She was an elegant woman around 48 with well-kept blonde hair and a determined look. "Claire, what are you doing here?" asked Victor, visibly nervous. "I came to support these brave people who finally found the strength to stand up to you," she replied coldly. "You're my wife, you should be on my side." "I was your wife for 15 years, but for the last 5, I've been living with a stranger I no longer recognize. A greedy, cruel, manipulative man." Claire turned to Arthur. "Mr. Arthur, I apologize for all the years my husband blackmailed you. I only recently discovered the truth, and I couldn't keep living in silence." "Claire, you don't need to apologize for his mistakes," Arthur replied gently. "Yes, I do. Because in the last few months, when I found out everything, I could have come to you immediately. But I was afraid of losing my standard of living, of ending up with nothing. But then I realized I already had nothing. No dignity, no peace of mind, no real marriage." Nathan watched the woman with admiration. "It took a lot of courage for you to reach out to us." "Actually, it was Brenda who gave me the courage." Claire smiled at the secretary. "When I first went to her, I was still confused, didn't know what to do, but she helped me understand that doing the right thing was more important than keeping up appearances." Victor tried once more to regain control of the situation. "Claire, if you betray me, you won't see a single penny of our assets." "Our assets?" She laughed bitterly. "You mean the assets you built by blackmailing innocent people? You can keep it all. I'd rather start over from scratch with a clear conscience." Brenda glanced at her watch again. "Everyone, the meeting starts in 5 minutes. The partners are waiting." Nathan took a deep breath. "Let's go in together. We'll tell the whole truth and let the partners decide what to do." "And what if they decide to sue the company?" asked Arthur, still worried. "Then we'll face that too," his son replied. "Dad, my entire life you taught me that honesty is the most important value. It's time we put that into practice, even if it's painful." Claire approached Victor. "I brought all the documents you hid at home, bank accounts, transfers, contracts. Everything is in a folder with Brenda." The man seemed to shrink in front of everyone. "You don't know what you're doing. There are consequences you can't even imagine." What consequences, Victor? Asked Nathan. Are you going to keep threatening us? You no longer have any power over us. It's not just about you, he replied quietly. The people who lent your father money in 1998, they're still out there. And they won't like seeing this story come to light one bit. A heavy silence filled the room. It was the first time anyone had mentioned possible consequences coming from outside the company. Arthur went pale. Victor, what do you mean? I mean, some secrets are too dangerous to be revealed. There are people who wouldn't hesitate to handle the situation in other ways. Nathan felt a chill down his spine, but held his ground. You're trying to scare us, but it won't work. If there are dangerous people involved in this, that's one more reason to put an end to this whole story once and for all. Brenda positioned herself beside Nathan. He's bluffing. For 20 years, he used the same vague threats to keep your father quiet. But he never presented any concrete proof that those people actually exist. That's true, Claire agreed. At home, when he thought I wasn't listening, he'd talk to you on the phone, Arthur. I never once heard him talk to those mysterious people who supposedly lent the money. Victor realized he had completely lost control of the situation. You'll regret this. Maybe, Nathan admitted. But at least we'll regret doing the right thing, not being cowards. The living room door opened once more, and this time it was Martha Harrison, Nathan's mother and Arthur's wife, a 56-year-old retired teacher who had always kept her distance from the company's business. Arthur, dear, the partners are asking if the meeting is going to start, she said, but stopped when she felt the tension in the room. Mom, Nathan said, approaching her. Sit down. There are some things you need to know. Martha looked at her husband with concern. Arthur, what's going on? Martha, I made mistakes in the past, serious mistakes, and now it's time to face the consequences. Quickly, Nathan explained the whole situation to his mother. She listened in silence, her expression shifting from worry to sadness, then to determination. Arthur Harrison, she said finally, in 32 years of marriage, you've disappointed me many times because of your stubbornness and your pride, but never because of your dishonesty. And that's not going to start now. Martha, No, she interrupted. You should have told me about this 20 years ago. We're a family. We face problems together. But if you think I'm going to let you keep being blackmailed by that man, you're very mistaken. Martha turned to Victor with a look that could freeze hell. Mr. Miller, you have 2 minutes to leave this company before I call my cousin, the lawyer, to sue you for blackmail, harassment, and every kind of crime we can prove. Mrs. Martha, you don't understand the complexity of the situation. I understand perfectly, she cut in. A greedy man took advantage of my family's vulnerability to line his own pockets for decades. And now that he's been found out, he's trying to threaten us with imaginary consequences. Brenda smiled discreetly at the strength of the Harrison family matriarch. Victor made one more attempt. If this story gets out, the company could be investigated by the government. You could lose everything. Then let us lose, Martha replied without hesitation. But we'll lose with dignity, not as slaves to a blackmailer. Claire approached Martha. Mrs. Martha, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Claire Miller, his wife, ex-wife, and I want you to know that I'm here to help your family in any way I can. Thank you, dear. Martha smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. Courage is a rare quality these days. Nathan looked around the room. His family was united for the first time in months. Brenda, who had always been like an aunt to him, was by their side. Claire had chosen the right side, even knowing it meant losing everything she had. On the other side stood only Victor, alone and defeated. Well, said Nathan, let's head to the meeting. It's time we told the partners everything. As everyone made their way to the meeting room, Martha held her husband's arm. Arthur, once this is over, we're going to have a very serious conversation about honesty in marriage. But for now, let's face this together. Arthur nodded, feeling lighter than he had in years. The meeting room was full. In addition to the 5 main partners, some of the longest-serving employees were present, along with the company accountant, who had been called in to clarify the irregularities Nathan had uncovered. Good afternoon, everyone, Nathan began, trying to control his nerves. "I know you were expecting a presentation about the irregularities I've uncovered over the past few months, but the situation is more complex than I initially imagined." The partners exchanged glances, sensing the tension in the young man's voice. "Nathan," said George Vance, the most senior partner after Arthur, "you can speak openly. We're all here to resolve whatever problem may exist." Nathan looked at his father, who nodded encouragingly. "The truth is, the irregularities I found weren't caused by incompetence or error. They were the result of a blackmail scheme that had been going on for over 20 years. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. "In 1998, when our company nearly went bankrupt, my father made a desperate decision to save everyone's jobs here. He accepted a loan of questionable origin." Arthur stood up. "Let me explain, son. You all deserve to hear this from me directly." Over the next 15 minutes, Arthur told the whole story. The 1998 crisis, the desperation of watching the family business fail, the decision to accept financial help without asking too many questions about where the money came from. "And Mr. Miller knew about this from the start?" asked Samantha Lee, one of the youngest partners. "He didn't just know," Brenda interjected. "He helped hide the money in the accounting books. And ever since, he's used that information to blackmail Mr. Arthur." Victor, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke up. "You're only hearing one side of the story. I've protected this company for years, keeping confidential information that could have harmed all of you." "Protection?" Nathan turned to face him. "You call it protection to steal money from the company and blackmail my father?" "I never stole anything," Victor tried to defend himself. "Everything I received was legitimate compensation for the risks I took keeping dangerous secrets." That was when Claire stood up. "May I speak?" Everyone turned to look at her. Many of those present knew Claire from company parties, but no one expected to see her there at that moment. "My name is Claire Miller. Was married to Victor, and I'm here to confirm that everything the Harrison family said is true." She opened a folder and began distributing documents around the table. "These are copies of secret bank accounts my husband kept. These are unauthorized transfers of company money into those accounts. And this," she held up a small recorder, "is conversations he recorded without realizing it, where he admits to blackmailing Mr. Arthur for years." The silence in the room was absolute. Victor tried to protest, but his voice came out weak and unconvincing. George Vance picked up one of the documents and examined it carefully. "These amounts are enormous. Victor, over the years you withdrew sums that amount to nearly half of the company's annual profit." "I can explain each one of those transactions," Victor replied nervously. "Then explain," Samantha challenged. "We want to hear your version of the facts." Victor looked around the room, realizing every pair of eyes was fixed on him. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. Arthur had committed a crime, accepting dirty money. If that had gotten out, we'd all have been hurt. I deserved compensation for the risks I took." "Risks?" Martha, who had remained quiet, finally spoke. "The only risk you took was getting caught blackmailing my husband." Brenda stepped up to the table and placed a sheet of paper in front of each partner. "These are calculations I did over the weekend. If we add up all the amounts Mr. Miller illegally withdrew over the years, we come to nearly $2 million. The impact of the numbers was devastating. Samantha covered her mouth with her hand, shocked. George shook his head in disbelief. $2 million, he repeated. "Victor, you practically bled the company until it was anemic." "And there's more," Brenda continued. "Over the past 6 months, the withdrawals have increased drastically. I believe he was planning to pull one last job before disappearing. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out since we're just getting started." Now continuing, Claire nodded in agreement. "It's true. 2 weeks ago, he started transferring money from our personal accounts to an overseas account. When I confronted him, he said he was planning an early retirement." Nathan felt a mixture of anger and relief. Anger at discovering how much his family had been exploited, and relief at finally having all the cards on the table. "Fellow partners," he said. "I know this situation is complex and that you'll all have a lot to think about, but I'd like to propose some immediate measures." "Go ahead, Nathan," George encouraged. "First, I believe we should immediately remove Mr. Victor from his duties at the company. Second, we need a complete audit of all the accounting books from the last 10 years. And third, we need to decide whether to sue for embezzlement or try to recover the funds through a settlement." Samantha Lee raised her hand. "Nathan, what about the original issue? The money your father accepted in 1998. Arthur spoke up. "Samantha, I know I made a serious mistake back then. If you all decide to remove me from the company, I'll completely understand. The responsibility was mine." "Arthur," George interrupted, "you made a desperate mistake to save the company and all of our jobs. What Victor did was a calculated, systematic crime. There's no comparison." The other partners murmured in agreement. The difference between an act of desperation to save the company and years of blackmail and embezzlement was clear to everyone. "Besides," Samantha added, "we're talking about something that happened more than 20 years ago. The borrowed money was paid back long ago through the company's profits. What Victor did was steal our money for decades. Victor made one last attempt to save himself. You're making a mistake. There are powerful people involved in that 1998 story. If that information leaks, you could have serious problems." "Who are these people?" George asked directly. "Give us names, addresses, concrete evidence." Victor hesitated. I can't reveal that information. It would be dangerous for everyone." "You can't because those people don't exist," Brenda stated. "For 20 years you used that fear to control Mr. Arthur, but you never presented a single piece of evidence that these external threats exist," Claire confirmed. "It's true. In 15 years of marriage, I never saw my husband show real fear of anyone. If those people were really dangerous, he wouldn't have had the nerve to steal so much money from the company." The logic was undeniable. If there really were dangerous people interested in keeping the 1998 loan a secret, Victor would never have risked drawing attention to the situation through his crimes. George stood up. "Well, I think we've all heard enough. I propose an immediate vote to remove Mr. Victor from all his duties at the company." "Seconded," Samantha said immediately. One by one, all the partners voted in favor of his removal. Victor was officially dismissed. "Now," George continued, "we need to decide what to do about recovering the stolen funds." "I have a proposal," said Claire. "Victor has some personal assets that can be sold to cover part of the losses. The house where we live, a beach apartment, 2 imported cars. I'm willing to give up my share of the assets so that everything goes to the company." "Claire, you don't have to do this," said Martha, moved by the woman's generosity. "Yes, I do," she replied firmly. "I lived for years on the money my husband stole from this company. It's the least I can do to make amends for the damage." Nathan approached Claire. "You'll be left with nothing. Are you sure you want to do this?" "Nathan, for 3 weeks I kept waking up every day feeling empty inside, knowing that my life was built on lies and theft. I'd rather start over from scratch with a clear conscience than keep living in plenty at the expense of other people's suffering." The determination in her voice impressed everyone in the room. Victor, who had remained silent during the entire discussion about the assets, finally exploded. "Claire, you're crazy. You're going to end up destitute because of these people." "These people have a name," she replied calmly. "They're honest people who worked hard to build a respectable company, something you never understood." "You'll regret this decision," he threatened. "The only thing I regret is taking so long to make this decision." George pounded the table to restore order. "Very well, then it's decided. We'll begin the legal proceedings immediately to recover Mr. Victor's assets and reimburse the company." "And what about the 1998 matter?" asked Samantha. "Are we going to make any official statement about it?" Arthur took a deep breath. "I think we should be transparent with all employees and with our main suppliers and clients. We'll tell the truth about what happened, both in 1998 and in the years that followed." "Arthur, are you sure?" was asked George. "This could have unpredictable consequences." "George, for 20 years I lived hidden behind a lie, being blackmailed, watching my company be bled dry. I don't want to spend another day like this. I'd rather face the consequences of the truth than remain a prisoner of a lie." Nathan smiled as he heard the determination in his father's voice. Dad is right. Transparency can be scary at first, but it's the only way to build a solid foundation for the company's future. Brenda stepped closer to the table. If you'll allow me, I'd like to make a suggestion. Of course, Brenda, George encouraged. Your opinion is very important to all of us. During these 20 years, I saw up close the suffering this situation caused the Harrison family. But I also saw the integrity with which they always treated employees, suppliers, and customers, even under pressure. I think that counts for more than a mistake made 2 decades ago. Samantha agreed. Brenda is right. A company's reputation isn't built only in times of crisis, but mainly in the way it treats people on a daily basis. Besides, added another partner who had remained silent until then, Arthur saved 30 jobs in 1998. Without his decision, we wouldn't be here today discussing the future of the company. We'd all have been unemployed for 20 years. The historical perspective brought a new dimension to the discussion. Arthur's mistake had been motivated by the desire to protect his employees, not to benefit personally. Victor made one last attempt to sow discord. You're very naive if you think this story will stay just between us. When competitors find out the company was involved with dirty money, they'll use it against you. Let me get this straight, said Nathan, turning to Victor. Are you threatening us with something you yourself have an interest in keeping secret? If you leak that information, you'll be publicly admitting that you committed blackmail for decades. The contradiction in Victor's threat became evident to everyone. He couldn't use against them information that also incriminated him. Besides, added Martha, if anyone tries to use this story against our company, we have all the proof that you're the one who blackmailed us. Anyone with half a brain will see who the real villains are in this story. Simone stepped closer to her husband. Victor, it's over. You lost. Stop trying to drag everyone else down with you and take responsibility for your actions. He glared at her with resentment. You'll pay dearly for this betrayal, Simone. The only betrayal here was yours, she replied without flinching. You betrayed your colleague's trust, you betrayed our marriage with your lies, and you betrayed your own conscience for greed. George slammed his hand on the table again. Mr. Miller, this meeting is over for you. I'm asking you to remove your personal belongings from the company today and hand over all keys and system access passwords. You'll all regret this, he muttered as he got up from his chair. If we regret anything, it's that it took us this long to uncover the truth, Nathan replied. After Victor left the room, a reflective silence settled over the room. Everyone needed to process everything they had discovered that afternoon. Well, George said finally, we have a lot of work ahead of us. Nathan, can you lead the full audit of the accounting books? Yes, I can. And I'll have Brenda's support, since she knows every detail of the company's financial processes. Of course, Brenda agreed. I'll make everything I know available to help with the investigation. Samantha turned to Arthur. Arthur, despite everything that's happened, I want you to know that we all trust you. Your leadership all these years, even under pressure, shows the kind of person you are. Thank you, Samantha, Arthur replied, visibly moved. I promise that from now on, there will be no more secrets. Any major decision will be discussed with complete transparency. And I want to propose something, Nathan said. I think it's time we implement a more robust corporate governance system, with regular audits, ethics committees, and full transparency in financial processes. The proposal was met with enthusiasm by all the partners. The crisis had created an opportunity to strengthen the company with better management practices. Simone, Martha addressed Victor's ex-wife, do you have plans for the future? Because if you need help starting over, you can count on us. Thank you, Mrs. Martha. Actually, I've been thinking about going back to work. I have a degree in psychology. I stopped practicing when I married Victor. Maybe it's time to resume my career. What a coincidence, Brenda said. Last month I spoke with HR about the possibility of hiring an organizational psychologist. With all the stress employees went through because of this situation, it would be important to have professional support. Would you be interested? Nathan asked. Simone smiled for the first time in a long while. It would be a perfect way to use my personal experience to help others. I think going through a traumatic situation like this gave me a unique perspective on resilience and new beginnings. The irony was almost poetic. The woman who had suffered the consequences of Victor's crimes could now help other employees recover from the trauma he had caused. "Then it's decided," George declared. "We have a new CFO to hire, an audit to conduct, a governance system to implement, and an organizational psychologist to bring onto our team. And we have a company to rebuild," Nathan added. "A company built on transparency, honesty, and mutual respect." Arthur stood up and looked around the table. "I want to thank all of you for not judging me for my past mistake, for understanding the circumstances, and for giving me a second chance." "Arthur," Samantha said, "we've all made mistakes. The difference is that you made yours trying to save jobs, while other people make mistakes out of personal greed." Martha approached her husband and held his hand. "I'm proud of your courage in telling the truth. You should have done this a long time ago, but I'm glad this moment finally came." Brenda also approached the family. "Mr. Arthur, Mrs. Martha, Nathan, it's been an honor to work with you all these years, and it will be an even greater honor to help rebuild the company on stronger foundations." "Brenda," said Nathan, "you saved our family. If you hadn't had the courage to tell me the truth today, I would have made a terrible mistake at the meeting." "Actually, Nathan, you saved yourselves." I just gave the initial nudge. As everyone was getting ready to leave the meeting, Claire approached Martha. "Mrs. Martha, I wanted to apologize again. I know my silence for so long contributed to your family's suffering." "Claire, dear." Martha held the younger woman's hands. "You were a victim too. You don't need to apologize for taking time to find the courage. What matters is that you found it. You're very generous." "I'm not generous, I'm realistic. I know how hard it is to face painful truths about people we love. You did it with great dignity." Nathan joined the conversation between the two women. "Claire, can I ask a personal question?" "Of course." "How did you find the strength to make such a difficult decision? Leaving a 15-year marriage, giving up all your financial security?" Claire thought for a moment before answering. "Nathan, a few weeks ago I was at the market shopping when I ran into Mrs. Rose, a woman who had worked in housekeeping at your company for many years. Everyone knew Mrs. Rose, a woman of almost 70 who had recently retired. She told me she was worried about the company's future because there were rumors that you were going through financial difficulties. And do you know what touched me the most?" "What?" asked Martha. "She said she was praying that the Harrison family would manage to solve the problems because you always treated your employees like family. She remembered when her son got sick and you paid part of the treatment, and when she had financial problems and you paid her year-end bonus in advance." Nathan was moved when he heard this. "It was at that moment that I realized my silence was helping to destroy a family that only did good for people. I couldn't live with that weight on my conscience anymore." Martha hugged Claire. "Thank you for choosing to do the right thing." As the meeting came to an end, everyone felt as if a huge weight had been lifted off their shoulders. The truth had been painful, but also liberating. "Well," said George, "I think we all need to go home and process everything that happened today. But before that, I want to propose a toast." Brenda went to the small cabinet in the room and brought out a bottle of water and plastic cups. "It's not champagne, but it works for the occasion." George raised his glass. "A toast to courage, to honesty, and to new beginnings." "To family," added Martha. "To the truth," said Nathan. "To second chances," completed Arthur. Everyone drank, symbolically sealing the beginning of a new era for the company. When they left the meeting, the sun was already setting over Chicago. The city lights were beginning to come on, perhaps symbolizing a new dawn for the Harrison family and their company. Nathan walked beside his father toward the parking lot. "Dad, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, son." "Do you regret accepting that money in 1998? Arthur thought carefully before answering. "I regret not having talked to you about it back then. I regret having carried this secret alone for so many years, but I don't regret having saved 30 people's jobs, even knowing where the money came from." "Nathan, in 1998, I had two options: accept financial help of questionable origin or leave 30 families unemployed. Maybe today, with more experience, I would find a third option, but at that moment, with the pressure I felt, I made the decision I thought would cause the least harm to the greatest number of people." Nathan understood his father's anguish. And do you really believe the money was of criminal origin? Honestly, I was never sure. The people who lent me the money were discreet, but not necessarily criminals. It could have been money from businessmen who preferred to keep their transactions away from the eyes of the tax authorities. It could have been foreign investors. It could have been 1,000 other things. So maybe the mistake wasn't as serious as you've imagined all these years. Maybe not. But the guilt I felt was real. And it was that guilt that allowed Victor to manipulate me for so long. Martha approached the two of them. Are you two going to stay out here in the parking lot talking all night? We're coming, Mum. Nathan smiled. Great. Because today I'm going to make that lasagna you both love. I think we all deserve a quiet family evening. As they walked together toward the car, Nathan reflected on how a day that had started with so much fear and uncertainty was ending with hope and family unity. Dad, he said suddenly, can I ask you one more question? Of course. The people who lent the money in 1998, do they actually exist? Arthur laughed for the first time in a long while. They do, son. In fact, they were 3 local businessmen who joined forces to lend money at low interest rates to companies in trouble. A sort of private investment fund. Nothing too dramatic or dangerous. Really? And Victor knew about that? He knew perfectly well, but it was convenient for him to make me believe they were dangerous people. It increased the fear and, consequently, his ability to blackmail me. Nathan shook his head, incredulous at Victor's capacity for manipulation. And these people, are they still around? 2 of them have already passed away. The 3rd one moved to Ireland about 10 years ago. The money was paid off in full in 2005. So there's no real risk left related to that loan. None. The only things that remained were my guilt and Victor's blackmail. Martha stopped walking. Arthur Harrison, are you telling me that for 20 years you tortured yourself and allowed yourself to be blackmailed over a completely legal loan that had already been paid off nearly 15 years ago? Arthur lowered his head, ashamed. When you put it that way, it sounds even more foolish than I thought. It's not foolish, Dad, Nathan said gently. It's human. Guilt and fear can make us take irrational decisions. Martha sighed. Well, at least now we can leave that past behind for good. When they got home, a simple yet cozy house in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago, everyone felt lighter. The house had never felt as welcoming as it did that night. While Martha prepared the lasagna, Arthur and Nathan sat in the living room to talk. Son, I want you to know that I'm very proud of your courage today. You could have exposed everything at the meeting without giving me a chance to explain, but you chose to listen first. Dad, I learned from you that family comes first. Even when I found out you had made mistakes, I knew there was an explanation. And now? How do you feel about taking on more responsibility at the company? Nathan thought for a moment. I feel like I can finally do that based on truths, not lies. That makes all the difference. You're right. From now on, everything will be transparent. No more secrets, no more decisions made alone. Martha called from the kitchen. The lasagna is almost ready. And Nathan, call Brenda and invite her to have dinner with us. After everything she did today, it's the least we can offer. Nathan called Brenda, who initially hesitated, but ended up accepting the invitation when he explained that they considered her part of the family. When Brenda arrived, she brought a dessert she had made in a hurry. Brigadeiros, she said, smiling. My specialty. During dinner, they talked about plans for the future of the company, about the changes they would implement, about how to ensure a situation like that never happened again. Brenda, said Martha, can I ask you something that intrigued me today? Of course, Mrs. Martha. Why did you decide to tell everything just today? After so many years of silence, what changed? Brenda put down her fork and reflected on the question. Last week, Nathan came to talk to me about the investigations he was doing. I saw in his eyes the same determination I used to see in Mr. Arthur when we were younger. And I realized Nathan wasn't going to give up. He was going to get to the truth no matter what. The only question was whether he would get there alone, possibly drawing the wrong conclusions, or whether I would help him understand the full context. "So you decided it was time to break the silence," concluded Arthur. "Exactly. Besides, I saw that the situation was unsustainable. Victor was getting more and more ambitious. The amounts he demanded were getting absurd. It was only a matter of time before everything came to light anyway." Nathan leaned forward. "Brenda, can I ask you a more personal question?" "Go ahead. During all these years, watching my father suffer from the blackmail, did you never feel like telling me or my mother?" Brenda sighed deeply. "Many times, Nathan. Especially when I saw your father arriving at the office visibly dejected after paying yet another fee to Victor. But I had promised to keep the secret, and besides..." "Besides what?" "Besides, I was afraid of Victor. He made it clear that if I told anyone anything, he would make up stories about me that could ruin my reputation and my job." Martha was outraged. "What kind of stories?" "Things related to the harassment he engaged in. He said that if I spoke about the blackmail, he would spread rumors that it was actually me who was coming on to him, that I was a troubled employee who created awkward situations." Arthur slammed his fist on the table. "That man is despicable. How can anyone be so cruel?" "Dad, the important thing is that now he can't hurt anyone anymore," said Nathan. "And Brenda, I want you to know that we would never believe lies about you. You are part of this family." Brenda was moved. "Thank you. You don't know how much those words mean to me." Martha got up and hugged the secretary. "Dear, you kept our secrets for 20 years. Now it's our turn to take care of you." The rest of the night went by peacefully, with conversations about future plans, laughter, and the feeling that for the first time in a long time, the family could completely relax. When Brenda said goodbye to leave, Nathan walked her to the car. "Brenda, thank you for everything. You saved our family today." "Nathan, you're the ones who saved me 25 years ago when you gave me a job and a new chance at life. Today I just repaid a little bit of that kindness." "And tomorrow? How do you think things will be?" "Different," she smiled. "Finally different. I won't wake up every day anymore wondering if it will be the day Victor makes up something new to hurt you all. I won't see your father walk into the office looking like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders anymore. And you? How do you feel?" "Light, Nathan. For the first time in 20 years, I feel light." After Brenda left, the family gathered again in the living room. "And now," asked Martha, "what are the next steps?" "Tomorrow we'll start the full audit," replied Nathan. "We'll map out exactly how much was embezzled and when. Then we'll work with our lawyers to recover Victor's assets." "And what about the employees?" asked Arthur. "They're going to be worried when they find out about all of this." "That's why it's important for us to be transparent from the start," said Nathan. "We'll call a general meeting tomorrow afternoon and explain everything. The employees deserve to know the truth." Martha agreed. "And what about Claire? Do you think she'll be able to reintegrate into society after everything that happened?" "I think so," replied Nathan. "She showed impressive courage today, and people like that tend to recover well from crises. Besides," added Arthur, "she'll have our support. It's the least we can do after she gave up everything to help us." The conversation stretched late into the night, with each of them sharing concerns, hopes, and plans for the future. It was as if, after years of superficial small talk caused by undisclosed secrets, the family could finally speak openly about everything. The next morning, Nathan arrived early at the office. He found Brenda already working, organizing documents for the audit. "Good morning, Brenda. How did you sleep?" "Better than I've slept in years," she smiled. "And you?" "Same. It's amazing how carrying secrets can affect even your sleep." They spent the morning organizing all the necessary documentation. Around 10 o'clock, an independent accountant who had been hired to conduct the audit arrived. During lunch, Nathan received a call from Claire. "Nathan, sorry to bother you. I wanted to know if I could stop by this afternoon to sign the asset transfer papers." "Of course, Claire, but are you sure you want to do this? It's a very radical decision." "I'm absolutely sure. Actually, I was thinking about something. Would you be interested in having me give a talk to the employees about how to deal with stressful situations and change?" Nathan was surprised by the proposal. "You would do that?" "Of course. I think my personal experience can help other people who are going through difficult times, and besides, it would be a way to start my professional reintegration. Claire, that would be fantastic. I'll talk to HR and my father. In the afternoon, as planned, the general meeting was held with all the employees. Nathan, along with Arthur, explained the whole situation clearly and honestly. The initial reaction was shock, especially among the long-time employees who knew and respected Victor. But as the details were clarified, the prevailing feeling became one of solidarity with the Harrison family. Mrs. Rose, the retired woman who had inspired Claire to find courage, was present as a special guest. "Mr. Arthur," she said at the end of the presentation, "you've been a good man all the years I worked here. One mistake from the past doesn't change that. And as for Mr. Victor, well, some people here already suspected he wasn't what he seemed." Other employees confirmed this. Apparently, Victor had created an atmosphere of subtle intimidation over the years, making inappropriate comments, creating awkward situations, and using his position to pressure more vulnerable people. "Actually," said a younger employee, "some of us even talked about filing a complaint against him with HR, but we were afraid we wouldn't be taken seriously." The revelation showed that the problems with Victor were broader than just the blackmail against Arthur. He had created a pattern of abusive behavior that affected several people in the company. At the end of the meeting, the employees expressed full support for the decision to remove Victor and implement stricter corporate governance measures. A week later, Claire gave her first presentation to the employees. The theme was New Beginnings, how to find the courage for necessary changes. The presentation was moving. Claire bravely shared her personal experience, talking about how she had spent years ignoring signs that something was wrong in her life, how she had found the strength to face the truth, and how she was dealing with the consequences of her choices. "Many times," she said to the group, "we know deep down in our hearts that something is wrong, but we pretend we don't know because facing the truth seems too frightening. But I discovered that living in a lie is much more frightening than facing the truth." An employee raised her hand. "Claire, how did you find the courage to give up everything you had built?" "Actually, I realized I hadn't built anything. I was living a life based on the money my husband stole from you. That wasn't building, it was destruction. Once I understood that, the choice became easy." After the presentation, many employees approached Claire to talk individually. Some shared their own experiences with difficult situations. Others asked for advice about changes they were considering in their lives. Nathan watched it all from a distance and was impressed by Claire's ability to turn her personal pain into something useful for other people. The following month, the audit was completed. The numbers were even worse than they had initially imagined. Victor had embezzled almost $2.5 million over the years, but thanks to Claire's cooperation and the sale of Victor's personal assets, they were able to recover approximately 60% of the stolen amount. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to stabilize the company's financial situation. Victor tried to legally contest the sale of the assets, but the evidence against him was indisputable. Furthermore, he discovered that other former employees had been encouraged to file formal complaints of workplace harassment against him. Facing multiple lawsuits, and with his reputation completely destroyed, Victor ended up accepting a settlement in which he gave up any rights to the assets in exchange for avoiding more severe criminal consequences. 3 months after the truth came to light, the company was stronger than ever. The new transparency and corporate governance policies had earned the trust of clients and suppliers. Nathan had officially assumed the role of CEO, working in partnership with his father, who remained as chairman of the board. The division of responsibilities was clear and worked perfectly. Claire was officially hired as an organizational psychologist and was developing wellness programs for the employees. Her own story of overcoming adversity had become a source of inspiration for the entire team. Brenda, who had thought about retiring, decided to stay a few more years to help consolidate the changes. Her experience and institutional knowledge were too valuable to lose. Martha, who had always kept her distance from the business, began to participate more actively in the company's strategic decisions. Her outside perspective and good judgment brought an important dimension to the discussions. On a Friday afternoon, 6 months after the events that changed everything, Nathan was in his office reviewing reports when Brenda knocked on the door. "Nathan, may I come in?" "Of course, Brenda. What's going on?" "I wanted to show you something," she said, handing him an envelope. Nathan opened it and found a thank you letter signed by all the company employees. "To Nathan, Arthur, Martha, and Brenda, thank you for the courage to choose the truth over lies, transparency over secrets, justice over convenience. You taught us that a company is not just a place where we work, but a community where we can grow, support one another, and build something greater than ourselves. We are proud to be part of the Harrison and Sons family." Nathan was moved as he read the letter. "How did you manage to organize this without me noticing?" "Claire helped," Brenda smiled. "It was her idea. She said that gestures of gratitude are important for strengthening community bonds." "That's true," Nathan agreed. "And speaking of Claire, how is she adapting?" "Very well. Last week she told me she had never felt so useful and professionally fulfilled. I think she found her true calling." "And you? How do you feel about all the changes?" "Renewed, Nathan. It's like I'm 20 years old again. I didn't know how heavy it was carrying all those secrets until I was finally able to free myself from them." At that moment, Arthur appeared at the office door. "May I interrupt your conversation?" "Of course, Dad. Come in. Actually, I came to call you both for a small celebration in the conference room." Curious, Nathan and Brenda followed Arthur to the room, where they found Martha, Claire, and a few other employees waiting with a cake and sodas. "What are we celebrating?" Nathan asked. 6 months of total transparency," Martha replied with a smile. "I know it might seem silly, but I think milestones like this deserve to be celebrated." "It's not silly, Mom," Nathan said. "It's important to acknowledge our positive achievements." Claire approached Nathan. "Actually, we have a surprise for you too." "What kind of surprise?" "Remember when you suggested I give a monthly talk to the employees?" "I remember. Well, other companies heard about our wellness program and are interested in hiring similar services. I thought about proposing a partnership." Nathan was intrigued. "What kind of partnership?" "Harrison and Sons could create an organizational wellness consulting division. I would lead the work, using our own experience as a success story." The idea was brilliant. Not only would it create a new revenue stream for the company, but it would also turn the traumatic experience they had gone through into something useful for other organizations. "Claire, that's a fantastic idea," Nathan said enthusiastically. "Let's develop a full proposal." Arthur approached the two of them. "You know what impresses me most about this idea?" "What, Dad?" "It's how you managed to turn one of the worst experiences of our lives into something that can help other people. It makes me believe we truly came out of this crisis stronger." Martha raised her glass of soda. "A toast to all of us, for choosing the harder path but the more honest one." "To new beginnings," Claire added. "To the courage to change," said Brenda. "To family," Nathan finished. As everyone toasted, Nathan looked around the room and reflected on how his life had changed completely in just 6 months. The company was stronger, his family was closer, and he had learned valuable lessons about leadership, courage, and integrity. Most importantly, he had learned that the truth, no matter how painful it may be at first, always sets you free, and that a community united by honesty is far stronger than any structure built on secrets and lies. At that moment, looking at the people around him, his father, who had found peace after years of torment, his mother, who had discovered a new way to contribute to the company, Brenda, who could finally work without the weight of secrets, Claire, who had turned her pain into purpose, Nathan knew that all the struggles had been worth it. The company was no longer just a business. It had truly become a family, united by solid values and mutual commitments to honesty and support. And the best part was knowing that this strong foundation would allow them to face any future challenge with confidence and unity. When the small celebration ended and everyone returned to their activities, Nathan stayed a few more minutes in the conference room, reflecting on the road traveled. He remembered that day, 6 months earlier, when he was about to expose what he thought was Victor's betrayal, only to discover that the situation was infinitely more complex. He remembered Brenda's gesture, silencing him with those 3 words that changed everything. "He's your father." At that moment, he had felt betrayed and confused. Now he understood that that gesture had been the starting point for saving his family and his company. Sometimes, he thought, the greatest blessings come disguised as the greatest scares. What seemed like the end of everything had become the beginning of something much better. With a smile on his face and a heart full of gratitude, Nathan returned to work, knowing he was building not just a successful company, but a legacy of integrity that could be passed down to future generations. And at the company's front desk, Brenda typed calmly at her computer, finally free from the burden she had carried for so many years, contributing to building a future based on transparency and truth. The Harrison family's story had become an example of how the courage to face difficult truths can transform tragedies into triumphs and destructive secrets into solid foundations for a better future. End of the story. And you? What did you think of this story of overcoming and courage? Can you imagine how hard it must have been for Nathan to discover that his own father had been blackmailed for so many years? And Claire's courage in giving up everything to do the right thing? Tell us in the comments which character impressed you the most, and if you've ever been in a similar situation where you had to choose between the truth and the comfort of a lie. Leave your like if the story touched your heart, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other exciting narratives like this one.